Hey everyone, ELD here, and this is one of the most interesting and controversial rules interactions that I have ever seen on the channel. Fortunately, it wasn't a judge call. This happened about a month ago. Players handled it themselves, so I don't have any firsthand information about the precise nature of how all of the interaction went. So I'm going to talk about some different hypotheticals and sort out the different sides of this issue. So basically what happened is we have an Empty the Warrens, Trigger Storm, pass priority. So nice healthy storm count, little bit of mana floating, passing priority, and then the other player has a Flusterstorm. Now you might think, well, that's too bad for the Empty the Warrens player. His stuff is going to get countered. Maybe he can use some floating mana to keep some copies around, but this is not going to work out too well. Actually, this is going to be a disaster because Empty the Warrens player, if they're going to play this angle, is going to maintain that they have simply cast Empty the Warrens and triggered Storm. Now, that's your opportunity to play a card like Stifle or Trickbind, but if you just jam a Flusterstorm at that point, you have an Empty the Warrens on the stack and a Storm trigger on the stack. There are no copies to be countered yet. So your Flusterstorm will target the original Empty the Warrens. And then you'll have your own Storm trigger, which when that resolves after both players passing priority, all of those copies are going to target original Empty the Warren. All of that nonsense is done. The original Storm trigger is going to resolve, creating a whole ton of goblins and a painful memory that you'll probably never forget. So that's the interesting part of this is you have the Flusterstorm. It just wasn't communicated precisely. Now, at that point, 100% you want to call a judge. Even if you've messed up in a tournament setting like that, you really should just call a judge and make sure that things work the way, because it's not working the way you expected it to. You may be a bit rattled. It is better to just call the judge, and they may actually rule in your favor. They may ask, what were you targeting? And you may say the Storm copy, and then they can say, well, that's not really a legal play, so we're going to have to rewind. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that this could go. If you're really being a stickler for the rules, you may still be out of luck. You can simply avoid all this by saying Storm Trigger resolves and then playing your Flusterstorm. I mean, this is a very manageable situation if you really understand the interaction, which I'm not going to lie, I'm willing to bet that most people are not familiar with this. It's a different way of wording it. Playing your Empty, triggering Storm, passing priority. That's very precise and accurate, and you do need to answer that with precision to make sure that it plays out in your favor. You've got the answer, you just need the knowledge to make sure that'll still work. Now, the particulars of this match, you can go back and watch it, were also interesting because there was a Force of Negation played on an Empty the Warrens in the previous game. However, there was an Overmaster played prior to that Empty. So basically, in the previous game, the player playing Storm allowed the Force of Negation to be targeting a copy, which wasn't really possible. Now, it's too late to go back and really sort this stuff out, but just in terms of ground rules, if you are a Storm player and you're going to want to try and hold people to that level of precision, you're going to need to make sure that you are consistent. So you can't be allowing people to counter a copy when there are no copies on the stack in some instances and not do that in others. You're going to want to be totally consistent and make sure that there's no issue there where people feel that you're angle shooting or whatever. It's one thing to play very precisely. It is another to potentially play both sides of a scenario and create confusion with your opponent and potentially misrepresent the game state, or even potentially in the eyes of some judges, depending on how you're answering questions. I mean, it could come down to actual cheating. So there's a wide range of very similar situations in Magic when you get toward that real nitpicky aspect of rules where that line between legal plays and illegal plays can be very, very sharp, and you do not want to be on the other side of that. Well, I am looking forward to hearing your thoughts about this particular interaction. It is certainly a contentious one. The idea that you've got the Flusterstorm and your intent is to counter all of the copies. However, those copies aren't on the stack yet. The only thing standing in between that was just saying trigger resolves. I mean, there's a lot of nuance here. I am looking forward to hearing all of your comments and responding to them. And hopefully we can kind of sort this out. At the very least, at a high level, make sure that you let that storm trigger resolve before you try countering any of the copies. Thanks for watching.